Drake's No Guidance.
What'd you say?
I stole Drake's song No Guidance and Chris Brown's song. You know, you got it, girl. That's my jam. Like I stole it. I know.
Let's hear it then. Come on.
Okay. So you know Drake's song No Guidance with Chris Brown? And they be like, you got it, girl. You got it. Like that's basically what they say. And they just tell you like, what else do they say? You just brought a new car off the lot with no mileage and everything. Like, you know, I like it because it basically said like you left the Fula Coupe at 17. Like that's what I did. Okay. So yeah, I like that. I listen to that song every day. I think that's one of the best songs they made together because they're both like toxic, but it was basically like telling you like, you got it. Like, you got it, girl. You got it.
So is this self-esteem chat something that you would say every day in the mirror to keep you going, to motivate you to keep doing what you're doing?
Like that's usually one of my songs that I listen to when I wake up, that song. And what else? It's another song called 1111 by Londrell. I like that song too. Those are like my go-to get up songs when I get up. So, but the No Guidance, that's definitely my you got it, girl. That's how I do myself. Like, okay, you know you got it today. You got it. You just gonna handle this thing and it's gonna be all good. So that was my song right there.
You got it, girl. Anybody else make a self-esteem chant or a saying? I did. So I'll read mine. It's like a little poem. It's not long. Okay. I am powerful. I am knowing, confident in my abilities. I am a manifester, hip shaker, head turner, universal alien. I am darkness, the stars, the laugh of my ancestors. I am unbreakable, but learning. I am woman, the two, wisdom and enlightenment. I am balanced. I am she. That's my chant. So that's a chant I made for the homework assignment. And so another thing that we did, I don't know if you guys did it, but one of the tasks was to see if you were listening to the She Who Whispers that you had, or your intuition, and to track that and see how that went for you. Did anyone do that?
Yes.
How'd that go?
I did. I really listened to my intuition, and it just like, I swear, I feel like I'm a little alien, like you said, in a world full of like everything. I just sat back and listened, and like I tried to practice a little bit of not jumping, getting mad when people try you so hard. So I just really tried to stay like mellow tone and listen to my everything around me. And it honestly, like the other day I was supposed to go to a funeral. My sister-in-law, her dad died. I know y'all, I'm bad. But I woke up and I said, let me put some black on. Just because I don't know what it was. I had on yellow. That's just my color that I wear. October is yellow, my yellow. So I would change my clothes and put on black. Some told me to put on black. And I was like, my brother texted me like the funeral starts in 15 minutes. I was out the door. But I was listening to my intuition. Some told me just put on some black when you get up. I don't know what it was. I felt like I was going to just stay in the house and just do my own thing all day. But I'm glad I listened to my intuition because I was late and I was ready.
That's good. That's good. Anyone else have a story of how they listened to their intuition or anything this week?
I did. It wasn't a good thing, of course. Mine usually isn't. But a friend of mine, we haven't really known each other that long. But I used to run a yoni steam spa where I live at, and I closed it like after 6 months, just because I didn't realize how draining that kind of healing work is, as far as seeing different clients and stuff. But anyway, she came in, and like I said, we're not really close, we know of each other, but when we had our session, she kind of opened up to me about some things, and she posted something on Facebook last night, something. And in our session that we had, and that's been almost 2 years ago, something told me that her and her husband were not connected. And it was from nothing she said, but it was just something I picked up on. And so anyway, they're a well-known couple in the area. whatever. So when she posted something was like, reach out to her. She needs somebody to listen to her. And I did. And unfortunately, she had just found out that day that he cheated on her. And so of course she vended and all that kind of stuff, and I was able to be there for her. But yeah, it was, as unfortunately my whisper she ain't bringing up good news most of the time.
Well, I think that your whisper is like it was leading you to someone that was going to need your healing or need your help, or need your support. And so it's like a matter of respect, because that's really much like an oracle or like a warning, or just like so you can be able to be there for your friend or your family or whatever that comes from. That sounds pretty good to me. That's really good. That's really good. Anyone else want to share your chant or anything? Okay, ain't no flag. Okay, so we were tasked with reading part 2, which is titled Ancestral Journey. So before I ask my questions that I have to get us talking, what is some things that popped out to you that were important? What questions did you might you have had, or anything of that nature while you were reading? Anyone? Okay.
The one thing that kind of stuck out to me was I was raised by my grandparents. So I do remember a lot of, just, I don't want to call them small things that my grandmother would tell me, but I just wish that I could have, or she would have, taught me a little bit more about, our, with venerating ancestors and a lot of hoodoo practices, some things she did and some things she didn't, because of course she was a Christian woman. So her, a lot of her beliefs were in the church, but I just like how she talks about the things like when a woman has a baby and when there's a death in the family and, things like that, a little bit more. I wish that there had been more deeper teachings and connections. I'm thankful for what she did teach me, but I just kind of would have liked to have maybe been taught deeper connections as far as like our ancestry and, venerating our ancestors and connecting and listening. The one thing that she did, I guess I don't want to say she passed down to me, but I have the ringing in my ears. And so that was something that, she would, have, and I have it. And it was always, someone passing over to the other side. So that was like the one thing, but I just wish there had been a little bit more that I could have, learned and been taught. I feel like now that I'm 40, I like how she talks about, this is as she's growing up. So, I just kind of, it's okay, but I just kind of, hate that I'm a little bit older now trying to learn it when I wish that maybe when I was, in my teens or early 20s, or even as a child, I would have learned a little bit more. But I'm thankful for what I have and what I've been instilled with, but just a little bit, deeper meaning to everything.
And my question is, now that with that, because I know you have children, how does that, like wishing that you had that as a child, how has that translated and trickled down to your babies?
It has tremendously. The only thing is I've noticed like my daughter, she's gotten the, I don't know where she's heard it, but she's gotten the whole, that's witchcraft. So like I had my Palo Santo and she's like, Mommy, that's witchcraft. I'm like, no, it's not. So I'm having to, from what she's hearing, I'm having to go ahead and like, hold on, nope, that's whatever you're looking at on TikTok or what somebody's telling you in school. No, ma'am. So I love that because I'm like, I'm here to teach you, because I don't want her to go into this whole thing of what she's been told or what she's hearing to make her look at her ancestry like, oh, that's wrong. I took them to New Orleans last fall break. And I was telling her like, this is a part of us, because she did have that question of, well, isn't that bad or isn't that evil? I'm like, no, this is, so I had to, go off my vacation as a social studies teacher and teach her like, hey, look, no, this is a part of us, so I'm glad that, I'm able to stop that in its tracks and let her know, no, 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 don't let anyone tell you that what we've learned as Black people, as African people, as descendants, that that's evil, because it's not. So I've had to stop her a few times and get her gathered. My son, boys, they just care about sports right now, but I'll get him right. But my daughter, I'm slowly teaching her, like, hey, this is a part of you. I don't want you to feel like what is a part of your ancestry is wrong, because it's not, because we've been taught that our entire lives, in school and everywhere else, that, oh my gosh, that's evil. Oh my gosh, that's witchcraft, that's demonic. And, we've got to stop that there. So.
And, and that's one of the beautiful things that you said when you said your daughter, because in that chapter, when they described the life of the Iolode, how she got, as a child, and it was like the life cycle of this woman. So, so give thanks. So if you're just joining, I haven't even dived into the questions that I have. I wanted y'all to express, how did you feel about part 2 of Ancestral Journey? What were some of the questions that you might have had? What are some of the things that you discovered about yourself? Or what are some things that that came up for you while you were reading part 2?
I feel the same way that how do you say her name? What's her name? Donnie. What she said, like, I wasn't around my grandma at all until like I turned like 15, 16, because we traveled around so much. So it's like now I really didn't get to really spend too much time with her. So like I was always around her lately, just soaking up everything. And I really don't feel like I know enough. Like, I try to write down all her recipes and all her little things that she did. And she just was like telling me certain things, like, when you make certain stuff, write it in your own book for your grandkids. They'll find it. So little things like that. And it's like, my grandma had 9 kids, and it was just like me and my daughter and one of my other cousins were over there just soaking it all up. And everybody else was just like, they're so church-like in my family that they let my grandmother go with all those secrets, like, and they just didn't write them down or anything. So now they're like kind of asking me, like, how did she say certain things and do certain things? And I'm just like, you should have sat with grandma and found out. My daughter, she knows. My grandmother taught her how to bake bread and stuff like that from scratch. And that's like something that a lot of people can't do. But my daughter, she learned from listening to my grandma, and then of course YouTube too. But certain things I do wish I was around more to be able to just soak it up some more, because my grandma left us with a lot of kids and it's a lot of personalities. So I don't really know how to deal with everyone, but I learned that also, like, a grandmother deals with everybody differently. And people have to accept that and understand that your relationship with her might not be how my relationship with her is. From when she was in her 20s and 30s, I've known her from when she was in her 60s and her 70s. So, you know what I'm saying? And our parents have to kind of respect that a little bit. I think they don't understand because they know them when they're in their 20s and they're hopping 30s, we know them when they're older, and we're different towards them and more wise and stuff. And that's one thing, like my mom, I don't really think she sat with my grandma enough to learn, some things. Cause my grandma was married for a long time and that's kind of rare these days, so. And she was in her moo-moos and all that with all these kids. And my granddad was still nice to her to the day she passed away. So I know she knows some secrets.
And one of the beautiful things about that, because a lot of us, I have that same experience. I grew up in the church, so that was passed on, like rituals of the church. And not necessarily just hoodoo things or things of that nature. And even though some things I do realize are hoodoo, and the beautiful thing is, though, because they don't have it, we can now create it ourselves. Like, I know sometimes I could get stuck in like, well, I was never taught this. I didn't never know this. And I'm like, well, one, you tap into your deeper ancestral realm. Well, where they have the recipes, they have those things. And also you are going to be an ancestor too. So you can create these things too. So as you study, you can create, like on Tuesdays, I do this. My household does this on Tuesdays. This is what we're going to do. On Thursday, you can create those traditions and those patterns so that, those who come underneath you do not have that same experience, because now is the time to eliminate the, well, I didn't have, or I don't know, because we exactly, for the future generations, because we now know that it was wiped out. They made us think that it was bad, and so now we know it's not bad. So the best way to undo that is to now create ritual and tradition to get back who we are, because it's in our stories, it's in our laughter, it's in our, how we practice. We are a ritualistic people, and so when we were thrown off our own time clocks and put on a time clock set on our own, then we're haywire. So if you're just joining me, I haven't asked any of the questions yet that I have for you. I wanted to know your take on part two. I will go into like, altars and things of that nature. I'll have those questions. But if you have any questions that you had or things that came up for you, please ask them. Let's talk about them and let's go forward.
The part her talking about in part two, like when she went away to college and how she started like finding out different things and researching on her own besides what she read in the book as a child, that resonated with me because that's usually, I guess, a time right now where everybody kind of like it's free from their parents and their family and they're able to explore. And then when she started talking about like the men of the group and how they were saying like, the Black man's problem is the Black woman. I feel like that has come back up this day and age now. And it's definitely like that in a lot of these conscious groups with these Black men, which it shouldn't be, but it's like, oh, she was going through that back then. I was like, dang, we're going through that right now again. Where like everybody on these podcasts are having these same conversations. I'm like, this is not right. Like, that's not the truth, but I guess that might be their truth. But I really enjoyed that part.
I was thinking the same thing about that when she goes off to college, how she encounters the men. And I thought the same thing you were thinking, like, wow, it sounds like we're hearing the same thing now. That whole debate about, women knowing their place and what the man is supposed to do. And there's so many different conflicting ideas. It's like, it's like you said, it was going on back then in the, early 60s and 70s. We're encountering that same thing now with, masculinity, femininity, roles and things like that. So.
Right, absolutely. And I think that we have to, because I think that we're the generation of people that has to break those cycles, that does things differently because we are remembering who we are. We have to make sure that in the next 30 years, this isn't happening again, and so I don't know about it's the Black woman's problem, but I do know we all need some healing in some way or another. And, and when you get to the core or the root of yourself, figure out who you are, where you are, and how you got here, and what's your purpose. When you know who you are, you have a sense of grounding in that nature. So I think that it just makes sense if you look at everything and things from the 70s and the 60s eras and that era. There's a lot of unresolved things that are just representing themselves back into the society because they need to be fixed. Not pushed aside again, but again, they need to be fixed. And as women, we're with culture keepers. We pass down things we're one of the children's first teachers, any children, whether we have them biologically or not, so we have to get right with our ritualistic selves, our character, and all of those things so that we can break some cycles so we're not back here 30 years and even though there will always be some level of conflict, like I don't think that there will always be a Zen place because people are different naturally. There will always be some level of conflict, but there needs to be a level of healing for us, for folks. So does anybody else want to chime in on what they thought about part two? If not, then I'll start with the questions that I have so we can go into that discussion, but let me know what you were thinking as you were reading or listening to. Okay, so we'll get into part two. So one of the things that she was discussing in part two is ancestral journey, honoring your ancestors. So my question to you all is, how do you honor your ancestors? Do you have an altar space? Just what's your experience around honoring your ancestors? And I'll post the question in here. And again, y'all can talk, this is more of an interactive book club, not just listen to, everyone speak. It's interactive. What were your experiences? This is how we learn and grow amongst one another when we're proactive and interactive.
So today I went to my grandmother's grave. Usually I do when my parents get on my nerves because that's where I have to go. So I went there today, and my grandmother had these really weird, because we planted some roses on her grave, and then she had these weird little plants growing out there. I don't know what they were, so I just picked them. There's some kind of weed or something. They smell like, I don't know what they are. So I just picked those off. And then my other grandmother, I usually get this little coconut candy that she likes. So I'll just get it and just sat it on in my living room. I really don't have an altar set up yet because I'm gonna move and have all my stuff set up better. So I just kind of work with what I got. And I have her pillow, and I just pretty much when I get that candy, I talk to her, and whatever I have to tell her about my mom, she usually kind of helps me with it. So I usually do that. And I make food, and I always set them some aside. That's pretty much what I do. I try to go to their graves because they're kind of spread around. Some's on the Fort Bragg, Sand Hills graveyard, which you can't really do too much over there. But then I have some ones that are off Ramsey Street in the Cross Creek graveyard, so I can go over there. I have a couple cousins, one of my cousins, I'm not gonna say he was bad, but he lived a cowboy lifestyle. So if I have something going on that's not so positive, I go to him. And usually it's pretty taken care of for me. I have a few ancestors that's gone. So I just kind of stick to what I need from each one of them. And most of the time I just try to take whatever they liked and take it to them. That's what I do.
Well, but that's creating an altar. One of the things that we realize is, as people, we are the altar. We are the space. We are the conduit for the ancestors. So working what you got is the best thing because it's coming from an honorable place, an authentic place. So that's a great way to honor all of your ancestors, especially actually going to visit them and seeing them and cooking for them, or cooking their favorite things, or even playing their favorite songs. Nothing is too small to honor your ancestors, and just making that altar of whether you're drinking some water or you're just taking some breaths and sharing space in that moment in time. We have a comment in the chat. I'll read it from Chastity. My background is quite loud. Okay. She said, I have an altar space in my home. Unfortunately, I have not been as attentive to it as I should be due to not really going into my healing space due to your surgery. Okay, understood. And that's the thing too. We can create that space wherever we are, just like I said. So, even if you can't go to the physical space, you can be where exactly where you are, calling out your ancestors' names, having, playing a song again. So it can be wherever you are. Give thanks, Chastity. Would anybody else like to go?
I have, I just started since I moved here. I have a ancestor space. And I have my mother who passed when I was 6, and my grandmother, my biological grandfather, and my grandparents pretty much. And I like it because my kids, with them being little, they ask, who is this? So that way I can tell them, this is your grandma, this is your great grandmother, this is, whoever. And the same thing, I go to my parents. Well, my mother is off Ramsey Street. She's at North Side. So I take her flowers when I can visit. That's the one thing I hate about being out here so far, is that birthdays and, Mother's Day and, certain days I can't go, but I will be home soon. And and I actually I started to honor her. I started my locks on her birthday. And that was over the summer. So the only thing that you know, and I don't know, maybe you all could chime in, like with my altar, I'm in the process of a separation. So I've had to pack up everything. So when I did have my altar up and it was in a room over the, you know, it was in our spare room or whatever, I just, again, when you have people that don't understand and are stuck in these old ways, you get a lot of, well, what is that? Or what are you doing? So like, for example, my grandmother, when I was little, she used to tell me to make her coffee and she would tell me to put the sugar in. Her thing was take the mountain off. So I knew to get the sugar, take that mountain off, and I would make her, and I would take it upstairs. And my husband would be like, what are you doing? I'm not gonna take my grandma a cup of coffee. That's how, you know, that's how she liked it. So when you have to fight with someone that doesn't understand and they're questioning, that kind of makes it difficult and frustrating, because it's like, this is me, this is what I need to do. And if you don't understand it or you don't agree with it, or you're on that whole thing about, oh, well, we don't do that around here, then, you know, that's on you. And I'm kind of, you know, glad that I'll be able to be in that space where I can do that in my home and have it there, because that's what I want. But I do that. I'll take water, I'll take coffee, you know, every now and then I'll take flowers, you know, birthdays, anniversaries, certain things. My dad is up there. He loved Hennessy. So on November, next month, I got to get his Hennessy for him. And I got to get a pack of Newports though. He smoked Newports, but you know, it brings me joy because I'm an only child. And, you know, that's my bloodline. And that's why I've hyphenated my name, Mary, because I'm the only child of my mom and dad, and they're gone. So I've got to honor that. So it's just kind of rough when you have someone that is not understanding of it, but, you know, God's moving that out the way. So I'm good.
Right. Yeah. And so I've been in that situation before, and that's the answer. You have to, you know, it's like that perseverance for and staying grounded in what it is that you're doing, because there will always be people who, you know, are going to have something to say, you know, because they're, you know, a little closed-minded or a lot closed-minded, and just are not trying to even, they think that if they understand or learn something, then they have to adopt it. But I think that when times like those happen, the more we get in tune to our Most High, who we attune to, and our ancestral work, they'll make spaces for that to get to have less friction in that area. Just like that time will come for you to move. Same thing happened with me, you know. And then it can't, or things will happen where you're standing in that gap, and then it's like, oh, well, this is real, or this is, you know, something will happen. And so I just say to maintain that sense of humility and keep it pushing. And, you know, anything that's not in alignment, it'll be removed or be pushed aside, or its impact will become less and less and less important.
The only thing I had a question about was, like I said, everything is packed because I'm waiting to hear back from a job, you know, back in North Carolina, but it's packed up. So I was just wondering, like, well, while I'm here for the next few weeks, you know, what can I do? So I'm in the morning, I'm just thinking about, you know, what can I do to still do those things, you know, even though I don't have the actual altar up, like, you know. So I was just like, maybe if I just come outside and, you know, just pray to them. But I just feel kind of off because I can't do what I was normally doing before all this stuff happened. So that's been like an awkward space for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would do something like what you did, like a meditation, or like make the coffee, sip the coffee, you know, do things like small that honors. If you can make a small makeshift altar space that you can like, you know, like how I have altar boxes, like you can take something. So I have something that you can take out, honor, and put back away and store.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Chastity says in the comments, I do honor my mom by cooking her signature dishes while listening to her favorite songs. I honor my aunt by baking her famous tea cakes that she only taught me to make. Not even her own children know her recipe, just me. That's nice. I also do other things that I learned from other ancestors. Victoria says, Sundays are usually my days, food, coffee, liquor. My grandmother loved snuff. I play gospel music for my great grandma that raised me. All my children 6 and under know what it is. I can't always promise they don't touch it though. And that's another thing too, children. The ancestors love the children. I know sometimes I'll have like new food on the table, and I'm a doula, so sometimes a client's children will come over and you're like, where's the baby? And the next thing you hear some,
Mhm.
and you see the baby eating the offering, but that's okay. You know, that is completely okay. You know, the ancestors love the children, and so those things are cool. So let them touch you. I mean, don't let them, but if they do, you know, it's the ancestors love it. So anyone else like to answer on that question? Or go to the next one.
I do. I've never heard, hold on. Child, excuse me for a second. Oh, sorry. Everybody likes to bother me when I try to talk. I never heard that you can be your altar like until now. And I was like, oh, wow, you know, because sometimes I'll get in the mood or like her her face would come up just, you know, in my head or my vision or like, hey, you're like kind of sort of sitting right next to me and I can kind of see you here and let me go put on, you know, the ring that you left me. My great grandmother had passed and so we got a lot of her like knickknacks and stuff. So I'll usually keep that and I don't have so much of an altar just like set up like I want to or how I envision that I want to have it set up. So I just have like a picture with her white diamond sitting right next to it because that was her scent. And that's usually how I have it. And then to honor like the rest of my ancestors, I kind of just I call on them because you know I didn't really get a chance to, of course, know the great grands and whatnot. And so I'm still trying to figure out how just to get a little bit more connected to them. I call on the ancestors that love me because I know there's probably some in my line that don't. And so that's kind of how I would say I honor most of my ancestors. Like I'm grateful to know one of mine who I identify as an ancestor now, which is my great grandmother. But I also have like her mother's, like my great great grandmother's face, her whole face. And a lot of people say that I'm reincarnated. I'm like, nah, I don't think so. But I don't know. Uh, Somehow, some way, I just try to make you know their favorite foods or whatnot, or put on their favorite perfume for the day, or you know wear the favorite rings for the day. Um, with my grandfather, he had passed away a couple years back, but we have his ashes, but we also have his like record player. So I'll go in his vinyls and I'll put like one of his vinyls on and I'll play it and you know, or just listen to the jazz music that he usually, you know, will listen to. But I just feel like that's how I honor the ones that at least I know that I, you know, personally have had a connection with, which will be a lot more greater than the ones that I kind of don't. I'm trying to see how I can do it the same, but I just feel like a lot of them won't get the same I don't want to say like love or anything, but the same like emotional connection just because I haven't, you know, seen them face to face type of thing. But I know they guide me, but I just haven't had that yet. But that's my answer.
Thank you for your answer. One thing we should know that our altars will go through many stages. They'll start from small to big, to be huge to small. So like there's no one way that an altar has to look. You know, it's whatever you're able to do with where you're at. And your ancestors, they're your own, so they understand. So, you know, when you hear other folks say, well, I have this and this and this and this, you know, ask them where they started. Ask them how they started. I started off like a little table, like kind of like this back here, you know, really small. And then the more I learned, the more I, you know, things got bigger, you know, it's just, it gets bigger. And then sometimes it gets really small and sometimes it has to come down and sometimes you have to redo things. Sometimes you have to rearrange ancestors, you know, sometimes you just have to rearrange. So it's a good thing to know that your altar can be something small but as grand as a picture and white diamonds. Those mean a lot, you know, and you can even put a little small tea candle right alongside it and you have it right there, you know, so it doesn't matter how small or how big these altar spaces are. They are altars and they're beacons for your ancestors to channel their way through to you, you know, so to help guide you and, you know, lead you where you're supposed to be in your life. Peace, if you're just joining me, I posted a question in the chat. The question is, how do you honor your ancestors? Do you have an altar space? If you do, share your experience. If not, is this something that you're interested in, you know? And so, and maybe not everyone is ready for an altar space, and that's okay too. Go ahead, Erica. Were you going to speak, or you just went off mute accidentally? It's okay. So,
I'll go.
okay, go ahead.
So I would say, like you said, you can start small. Just start somewhere. Anything, like you said, is an altar. So that's how I started, small. I just had my ancestors really don't like pictures, so I didn't have to put their pictures up, but I would use different things that would remind me of them. Or if I could get some dirt from my great grandmother's house, or a brick, or like you said, some Newports or something, I just would put it on a little stand, like you said, and a candle. It doesn't have to be pictures. It can just be things that you know that remind you of them. And then, like, I just had it grow and grow and grow. So now it's a few tiers. I have my dad's flag from the military on there. Um, some things you might be called to put on there that you don't even know why, or if you know it's your culture, you don't know it's your culture. So searching more and more in my culture, in the California side and Oklahoma side, we have like the Native American, the Mexicans, and De los Muertos, like by celebrating that. So I have a lot of the sugar skulls, I have the hearts on there, and something just like, oh, here, add this, add that, add this, add that, and just listen to it, because it's probably your ancestors telling you to grab it. Even if you know, I don't even like this candy. Like, why am I grabbing this? Or why do I have a taste for this? Or why am I grabbing this soda? And just put it up there and for them, and just tell them, this is for you guys. It's for you ancestors. Like tonight, I'm making a dinner that came up out of nowhere, like in a few minutes. And I was in the kitchen just cooking. I'm just getting done. And the plates look like, like I had been planning this meal for like a week or so. And usually when that happens, I know it's my ancestors stepping up, telling me, hey, we want this, we want that. My dad's birthday just passed on Wednesday. So we celebrated him, we sung him happy birthday, got all the candies, the alcohol, all the food. His candles are still burning. And so we're making another round of food tonight. I'm gonna put it on the ancestor altar. And I'll share a picture of like what I'm doing and how the space is set up. Like I said, I don't have pictures like that on the altar, on my altars in the living room area. So when people come in, they could just see that it's something set up, but they're not gonna automatically know, oh, that's an altar to somebody. So that's how I go.
Yeah, and for mine, when you walk in my space, I have pictures. I have pictures and like the things that they had. And well, I don't have too many pictures because some of mine are unknown. So I have like a jar of names of unknown, or some known I know, but with no pictures. And then I have a jar on my altar of, you know, requests, things I want, you know, things I need assistance on. And sometimes I'll go back after like maybe a month or so, and I'll look, I pull it out. I'm like, well, wow, look, it's already been accomplished. So things like that. And, you know, that's my offering, you know, and some people ask and then they give the offering as like a reward, but I give the offering as I ask, you know, or request or things of that nature. So yeah, all altars look different. I didn't know that you didn't have to have pictures, but it makes sense because also in Jambalaya is saying write their names down as well too if you don't have any pictures. Victoria says, I also have an altar for my son that passed last year. I will join his with my grandma's after he turns one. My condolences.
It's crazy that y'all were saying about pictures, because my ancestors don't like pictures either. I had to go through my house and take them down. I had way too many in here. And when I tell you I took them all down. And things just started like, boom, one thing. It was like everything. I was like, okay, so I need to, like you said, cleanse my space a little bit more. And each room in my house is different. I did that too. Like how she was talking about the sugar skulls. My whole kitchen is sugar skulls. Like that's my day. I don't know why I like it so much, but it's one of my ancestors. I know. So I think I agree with that. You got to clean it up, and them pictures sometimes, you know, got to get rid of.
And that's one thing too. when we position ancestors on our altar, you got to be considered. You have to consider if they were beefing or had any gripes when they were alive. Because if they didn't like each other when they're alive, they're not gonna like each other. Being passing on don't make you nicer or like don't make you cool. So if you was beefing at that wedding, you're gonna be beefing in that, in the spiritual realm. So sometimes when there's a lot of chaos or confusion or like a lot of argumental temperament in your space, look at the altar. Did you just ask somebody, did you sit cousin June next to Auntie Tiff, knowing daggone well he stole from her and she taking that to the grave literally? You might want to separate them. You might want to like whatever, you might want to do those things too. And just like you said, it's like you had them up on the wall. They probably was looking like, I don't even want to look at her. Why am I looking at her kind of thing? So that's also something to be mindful as well too when we put up our altars.
At one point I had my dad and my mom's mom together, and I was like, oh, let me move them because she hated him. So I had to separate them because she did not like that man. So
absolutely, exactly. And that dynamic will manifest in the household too. And so you're like, what in the world is going on? Like you don't know what's going on. It's like, the energy that you've invited into your space is warring here, and so that on my altar, I make sure I put my aunt next to my grandfather, because that was his baby, so it's like they gotta be together because I know he will be like, all right, relax, like, all right, just chill. So because my auntie was wow, I love her, but her father, will be able to keep her in check and, do all those things too, especially because I have unknown ancestors. And my auntie would be like, who are these people? We don't know them people, and so, but my grandfather is more like, okay, let's relax. So would anybody else like to share on this particular question? Or I switch to another topic? Okay, so I'm gonna read a section. Okay, so I'm gonna ask about, in the book it was talking about death and reincarnation. I'm about to post them in the chat. So it talks about death and reincarnate. I'm going to be posting the questions in the chat, and you'll be able to answer them, however you can. So in the book, it was talking a lot about death and reincarnation. And I wanted to pose the question of, what are your thoughts on, death, reincarnation? How has this evolved as you dive into your craft and your own spiritual practice? I know a lot of us come from that fire and brimstone. So how has that evolved for you in this day and age?
The other day I was watching the Egyptians and I was just like, I'm with them on the death. Like my friend was over here and I don't know how we got to it. We were talking about Oriasis. And I just was like, I believe in reincarnation. Like I really, really do. I don't think that like the way the Egyptians used to do things, it kind of was confusing a little bit, because then you watch and you see like everyone did their own things differently. They would change certain things. So, but when it came to the death, they had that practice that they would follow. And it was just like, why do they bury you with all your belongings? And we don't do that. So like as Christians, we say, you can't take it with you when you go. But the Egyptians used to take everything with them when they went. Everything. They took the cats, everything they needed for the afterlife. So I don't know. I believe in reincarnation. I was really sitting here for hours just watching, just thinking like, what in the world? And they were serious about that stuff. Like death, you had to be trained and ordained to be able to do those types of things. And they had this whole practice of weighing the heart on the with the feather, and but then they still said, though, if you wasn't light as a feather, it was some bad was still gonna happen to you. So it's always some bad that was still gonna happen to you. But it didn't sound like the hell that they talk about in the Bible, like the burning of the flesh. So I was just like, I'm with the Egyptians on that reincarnation. Reincarnate me into a cat and I'll be fine.
Anyone else like to share?
I've always had, so like with death and reincarnation, I'm terrified of death. Like other people can die and I go into a panic of like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I know that's only because growing up in the church, all I heard was if you sin, you do this, you do that wrong, you going to hell. You going to hell. So that was that fear of, you know, if I did something wrong, or if I lived my life this certain way, when I died, I'm going to hell. And so that's something that I'm trying to work through, because I am getting older and, you know, I know people, you know, it's going to happen, but I just want to get past that fear of, you know, the after, you know, like what I was taught as a child and as a teenager about what the afterlife looked like from, it's basically a Christian perspective. It was, like you said, the fire, brimstone, oh, if you don't do this. And I think that's terrible. And it's something that I've got to unlearn, because again, I know that death is imminent. It's going to happen. But I've just always had this fear of, well, if I don't straighten up and do this, then I'm going to hell. And then that has also stumped my growth in my learning my spirituality, because again, I've got to unlearn all this stuff about, oh, that's evil. Oh, that's demonic. I had my sister-in-law here tell me, I went to a sister circle in Nashville, and she was like, you know, God gonna punish you and you better stop doing that stuff. And I had to stop talking to her, because I'm just like, there you go with that fear of, you know, if you die, something gonna happen to you, God gonna get you because you doing all this stuff. So we've got to, you know, I've got to unlearn all of that. So I just have a hard time with even facing, you know, the afterlife and death, because I've been traumatized pretty much. Just like, you know, if I don't do things this way, then I'm going to hell. And I don't want to live like that no more. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I know for me, I was that way too. But what helped me, I had to realize I wasn't happy where I was, you know, and so the fire and brimstone, I feared that, but I was like, but I'm not even, I knew I was supposed to fear it, but something was telling me, I'm like, I don't think I'm finna burn up. Like, and I'm willing to like live and see, you know, because I think for me, I think death, depending on how you live your life, either way, death is another experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all born here with a purpose. And if we don't complete that purpose, if our soul does not complete the purpose we're meant to, we come back. That's why we have, you know, these past lives, because we aren't meeting our soul's purpose. So like, all right, we'll give it, try it again. I think that there's a book called The Book of Life. The Book of Life talks about all the dead, of the world of the dead. You know, it's like, you know, it's, you know, so, and a lot of the preparations, like Osiris and all those things, preparation for the other, you know, the other side, the afterlife, you know. So I think that there is another something on the other side. I think that the fire and brimstone was taught that because they don't want you to know that, you know. I think that because in the same breath, even within that biblical sense, if you studied, you know, the Bible, also the Hebraic mysticism, they have, you know, all those talks of another other realm. So I just think that, so I had to wean myself out of that fire and brimstone fear too, because I'm just like, well, if I stay here in this faith, I'm faking it, I'm gonna burn anyway. Like, so I have to just get out of that, because my father's a pastor. You know, my family is very, you know, they're understanding, but they're Christian as well. And so I used to have a fear of like, well, if I do this, they're gonna think I'm weird. If I do this, I'm like, listen, I'm weird. I'm gonna do something crazy. You know, because if I wasn't doing what I felt was right, I've then pulled myself into a depression, and then I just felt stagnant, and then I become stagnant in other ways in my life too. It's because I wasn't being honest with my connection to how I connect to the divine and the spirits and ancestors around me. So and that was really trying and a struggle too. I do think sometimes I may catch myself, and then I'm like, girl, you've grown. I'll be forgetting. I'm like, I don't need permission from these people to live and do what I want to do. Because we still in the face of our family members, we go back to our roles in that family. So for me, around my family, I go back to being the daughter. I go back to being the kid. I'm like, but I'm like, wait a minute, I'm an adult. I don't tell my mom I'm grown because I just, respect. But I'm an adult. I have to make decisions. If I want to be the change or break these curses and these bloodlines and generational curses that we like to say, those take big moves and doing something different that your generations before you didn't do. So, and that includes standing up to them because they're not going to be here forever. Lord willing, they're here as long as they're able to be, but we're going to be those ancestors. So we have to make that dynamic switch and change and be like, listen, with all due respect, I got, and so, and I do know some people where their family cuts them off, and so they have to create their own family. And I do know people whose family like, whatever, that's them, so it varies. It's not all the same cookie cutter outcome, but what's important is that, your spiritual, emotional, mental health and stability, and how we do that is study more, research more, ask questions, talk with one another, so that we're relearning things that our ancestors had when we got here. But fear and oppression in almost every angle you could think of was thrown at us so that we are afraid to get to know ourselves or do what is naturally right. Because guess what? Everybody's not like that. Everybody doesn't feel that spark of that awakening. They don't see that light of like, wait a minute. Well, I know I'm not tripping because everybody's not meant to, and so we have to, part of that journey is being brave and standing up. And one of the things I've learned for fear, knowledge, we fear what we don't know. So the more we know and learn and apply what we want to learn in that aspect, we that fear lessens a little bit more. So would anybody else like to answer this question? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Let me go back to this chat so I can answer this question correctly. Thoughts on death. I'm not afraid of death. I actually think it's weird, but I do think it's quite fascinating. Only in the way of also like within the spiritual realm, I am very intrigued by just how the spirit moves within, or of course the like outer body experience that you will have, once you pass. And I'm just like, man, are you like an ancestor as soon as you pass, or you just on, you're on your journey to it type of thing? And I'm like, oh, I don't even know what's going on, but it really does interest me. And so I'm not going to say like I don't get sad when people pass, because I absolutely do, because the physical aspect of you being here is not here anymore. But the spiritual is where I can feel like I can get the most connection to you, since I'm, pretty much spiritual. And with the reincarnation, I absolutely believe in that. I've been told many times that I'm reincarnated, by people in my family and by my boyfriend. And I'm like, sometimes like they'll say it and sometimes I don't want to hear it, but then I'm just like, I guess I can accept it, because the only person I could feel like I'm incarnated from is from my great grandmother, in which, like I said, I have her whole face. And then, honey, I'm tired. I am tired. She had 16 kids, and I don't feel like I had about 20 of them. And I'm like, I don't want no kids, no nothing. Like, I'm very much of an old soul. I'm very much an old school person. I like to take care of people. She was also a midwife as well. So I'm like, maybe I'm her. I don't know if I am, but I'm like, it's kind of like it's right in the pudding. Like, I have her face. I probably have her mannerisms, even though I didn't get a chance to know her. And people tell me, I remind them a lot of her. So I'm like, I definitely believe in that, within that sense. But I believe people can come back as many different things. It really depends on how they live their life. I don't know if you want to come back as a tree, but it could be possible, but I have no idea just yet. I'm still working kind of, on myself and within that aspect to understand more of it. But I absolutely do believe it. And I'm trying to craft it into, my practicing and my routines every day to kind of understand it. And not to push it on people is what I'm also trying not to do, only because I'm like, if I don't fully understand it just yet and I kind of can't explain it to you, it's kind of a me thing, then you're not going to understand how I'm understanding it. Because trust me, it's a lot of people that be like, huh? And I'm like, honey, it's the thing you won't understand. But yeah, that's my answer. Sorry.
Don't apologize. Okay, Victoria says, I feel like my third daughter is my husband's mother reincarnated. She was conceived the same week she was killed, born 2 days after her birthday. Fiery spirit, just like her in her prime. Right, yeah. And that's one of the things too, that she mentioned in the book when like, I think it was channeling ancestors. You make sure like, hey, I only need you for this, like not opening up your womb to, to other ancestors, who may be, malicious was what they were talking about in here. But I think definitely that's saying we are our ancestors reincarnated. I do think that that is why we favor, our ancestors to the T. And it's crazy because it'll be somebody from way back when that they may have one picture of, and you have to, so it's like, okay, wow, how are we connected? Why are we connected? What message, so those things. And we also have to make sure that we are not fulfilling their purpose, that we use them as a guide, but make sure that we are fulfilling our own, because ancestors and spirits can do that. They can be like, well, I wanted to do this, so let me go continue to do this through her because that's what I want to do. So make sure, even as you're getting these, gifts, even as you're, being inspired to do these things, make sure that you are in it. Make sure it's like this is something you wanted to do as you're leaping and all those things. Would anyone else like to go before I switch?
I will.
Okay.
So in the last, I probably say 8 years, I have reshaped my idea of what death really means. With the passing of my husband, it was more of, it was hard to accept him leaving, but the way that I processed it was he completed his task here. And when I did his memorial service, a lot of people didn't understand why I did a celebration of an ascended master. And I said, my husband was one of those people that if you knew him, you knew why I chose that. He was full of knowledge. I always called him an old man in a young man's body because he was so old spirited. And it was funny because when we gave birth to our children, I kept saying, whose old granddaddies did we give birth to? Because my sons act like little old men. And when most people see them, they're like, they're so mature for their age. And I'm like, I look at them and I see their dad, but then I'm looking at them and I listen to how they talk. And I'm like, whose granddaddies are these? Because I'm like, my granddad, only one of my grandfathers is deceased and his father passed. And my other grandfather is alive. So I'm like, whose granddaddies is these? Because my children very much act like little old men. But prior to my husband passing, we both had a dream. It was very similar. And I listened back because I used to record when we used to discuss our dreams. And I listened back to it. And I think that when he passed, that's why one of the reasons why I kind of went with the celebration of an ascended master, because we dreamt about, I guess, our version of what I guess heaven looks like. I don't even want to call it heaven, but wherever the next part of the next phase of where we're supposed to be. And I saw the finished product, but he saw the building of it. And he had to be a part of the building of what I saw the finished product of. And so as I've gone through my grieving process, though yes, in the physical, I long for my folks, I miss my people, very much so. I have learned that in this process that their energy is infinite. And I've always felt my people. So people are telling my boys, oh, your grandparents went to heaven. I'm like, what really is heaven? Do we really know what heaven is really like? Because I'm like, yes, the Bible describes it one way, and I grew up in the church, so like y'all said, the fire and brimstone. Oh, I'm scared to go to hell. I'm like, well, if I go, I go. At this point, I'll go if I got to go, all by myself. But uh, but at the same time, I realized doing my own research and having conversations with my late husband, we would talk about like concepts of hell and why all of a sudden, is it something that you don't really hear a lot about and where it originated and stuff like that. So it kind of helped me kind of deconstruct the idea that what I fear the most in, I guess you could say, dying, and I guess my idea of dying at this point is that I have to relive bad parts of my life in a consistent cycle. And to me, that's what I consider a hell, that I don't leave the realm of, I guess you could say, what people call purgatory. That's what I feel like I would be in if I did not complete whatever it is that I was sent here to do. And I don't want that. So I want to be like my husband, be like, chuck them deuces. If I see the light, I'm going in the opposite direction because I don't want to come back to this ghetto earth. So, and that's I've been and I don't want to say reinventing, but reshaping my idea of what death is. And it is still scary, yes, because, in my case, I have small humans and I don't want to go nowhere. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to leave them without me. However, I'm also trying to prepare myself and my children for, in the event that I am not here, how we can still communicate with each other, because I'm working on that with them, with their father and with my mother and with my grandparents who we saw every single day of their small lives. So I get the opportunity to share in what I'm learning with my humans. And I think that that's part of the growing process of knowing how to hopefully live my life in a way that I won't fear death in the long run, because I know either I've completed the task that I was sitting here to do, or I'm gonna have to come back to this bad boy another round again. And I don't want to do that. Reincarnated as somebody else. But that's all. That's all I got.
Give thanks for that, Eric. I appreciate your share. Would anyone else like to go or have a comment before I switch the topic?
So my dad's mom passed away when he was 12. He doesn't remember her. And we didn't really know that side of my family. Their last name is Goen. So once we came back to the United States again, I finally got to meet them. And they're like, oh, you look just like her. I'm like, who are they talking about? Like my grandma. She was the only girl out of 7 boys. And every time I go around them, her name was Catherine Goins, but they used to call her Queenie. So that's what they called me. Like all my uncles, they're like, you look just like her. And I'm like, I don't know who y'all are talking about. Like I never met her, I never seen her ever. And that's that one ancestor that we have one picture of. And I seen her, and they say I look like her, but maybe like when my hair's tied up or something. I don't know what she used to really do. I really don't know her. I don't. My dad doesn't even know where she's buried, so it's kind of weird. But they always tell me that I look like her, and like when I would go around them, they would like act like I was like her. Like, oh my God, you look just like her, and I'm like, I don't know her. So I do want to get to know her, but I really don't know how. My dad told me that he had a dream about her when my mom was ready to have me, that like saying, you better take care of that baby because she's going to come out looking just like me. And here I am, looking just like her.
Do you know like some of the things that she likes or used to like to do?
No, she liked my granddad.
Do you know of things that like, do you know anyone who would know what she likes?
They're all passed away. The only one that I was close with was my uncle, and she really loved my dad and my uncle. Like her kids was her life. I know she loved them to
Still
death.
present? Is your uncle still present?
Mhm.
Can you talk to him and ask him things like she would like?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to him. He's kind of older, so he's like, all over the place. I don't know what he's doing. She's trying to like work himself to death. He likes to work in the yard, and he's like 90 or something.
Talk to him. That might brighten his day, talking about someone who passed on. You might hear stories and all those things. And so as you hear those stories and you hear things that she might like, then you can set up like a small altar for her. And then, and then you'll be able to then you might have like random, you might smell something random, or you might have a taste for something, or have an urge to cook. These might be the things that she wants to present to you for her altar space. Go ahead, Victoria.
Oh yeah, it was loud in here a while ago. I wrote that comment, but I just wanted, when she was I can't remember who it was. I was talking about like reshaping your thoughts around death. That was something I used to be so afraid of. I was raised by an older generation, like a 60-year age gap. So I just watched people die all the time as a kid. People that I grew up around and loved. And so it was like very hard for me. Like he was my step grandfather. He passed away when I was in middle school, and I spent a lot of time with him. And I had a nervous breakdown. So like that was the first time that like somebody really close passed away. And so I always been afraid of it, kind of, sort of. And but since I've been with my second husband, I've gotten really comfortable with death and understanding like some people, it's dark, I guess. Because I feel like I've been to the darkness so many times, like it doesn't bother me anymore. But it's like I have an understanding about certain people could not remain here if I or my people in my family, if we're gonna ascend to another level, they had to pass on because they would have held us back. And because of their opinion, the things that they believed and their opinions and how we honor them when they're alive, we wouldn't have been able to do that. But I've lost both of my, I guess the close women figures in my life that I did have. Wasn't raised by my mother, but my great grandmother, great grandmother that raised me, she passed away after I had my third child. And then my husband's mother-in-law passed away after our fourth child. Well, like I said, she was conceived the same week that her grandmother passed. And then I lost a son just this last year. So it's like, if I live through all of that, and what I'm saying, like this is just it's another thing that I'm gonna have to deal with. My only concern is like leaving my kids, but I thought, if nothing else that I've been through in life is gonna break me, my son's death would have done that, and it actually like sparked another side of me or another part of me that I didn't even know existed. So it's not. Death to me isn't what it used to be.
Give thanks for that. I appreciate that. Would anyone else like to share before I switch to the next topic? Okay, so I'm gonna read a small, like little excerpt from the book, and then I have the question here. If you are serious about your spirituality, you will see that white women must stand in support of their mother and see Black women as their mother's sisters. And Black women must look beyond the 500-year-old veneer of distorted history and recognize their sisters' daughters. We are all children of a common womb. In the spiritual sense, everyone on this planet, Black, white, female, male, gay, straight, or bisexual, is kin incarnate. We are not that. We were not that. We would be kin in spirit on another plane. So take the time now to give racism a dishonorable burial. Let us starve him out, deprive him of his spirit, and eradicate his name. So my question is, what is your view on race, historical systematic racism and spirituality, and how has this harmed or helped your development? Me, I know we hear like white folks steal our stuff and take our things, and I really operate on that mindset really heavy, or have, and to the point where I don't want to learn any knowledge from anyone else. I'm like, you tap into spirit. I had to learn that Afro folks don't own spirit. They don't own spirituality. They don't own, and that other cultures have their own practice. And just like us, we borrow and pick from everyone else, from different things too, just like they do from us. So I really had to know and understand that a lot of times and I'm still growing through this, you have to check yourself. It's like, am I operating through a trauma to the point where I'm missing out on an opportunity to learn some more wisdom, to learn some more, knowledge that I need to learn to better help shape my own craft with my connection and what I'm doing, what I have going on. So it's, for me, I would say it's a work in progress, because sometimes I just, I will catch myself feeling away or just feeling annoyed. Let me describe the way, feeling annoyed or kind of confused or just aggravated when I see someone who is not melanated or teaching on some things. I'm like, what you know? What do you know? But knowledge and spirit and spirituality is beyond the construct of race and class and all those things. And I have to remember, just like the church, it's man that takes something that's omnipotent and omnipresent and, and makes it and cheapens it, with their own experience and in their own understanding. And so that goes into, the same thing in hoodoo and all those things. I do know like a couple of white wicked women and, people who of the coven of Thor, and like they have their own traditions and they have their own cultures. And you can learn I learned how, like, oh, y'all do this with this. I'm like, oh, okay, dang, I didn't know. So it's like, it's broadening our horizon. And I think that I know that true wise women, especially women who are keeper of culture, we got to learn a lot of things outside of ourselves to be able to talk and tell our children what this is, so they don't have to go out into the world and figure out themselves and be all ass backwards, So I'm still growing through that, because there's that level of like, I don't distrust there, and so I know we're in a time where everything's like share on social media, and this is what I do. Oh, look at my work that I just did. I'm like, you did some work and you're showing some people like the whole thing, and but the level of discretion was what made our culture so great, throughout that oppressive states. And so we still should have that operation of some discretion, because people still stealing, but we also should be able to know and be able to share our knowledge and be able to receive it as well from other cultures, just to broaden our understanding of things and to understand how things connect, of that nature. So that's my input on that. I'm still working and growing through that. It's my answer, it's a little cringe, but I'm evolving. So,
I would say, in regards to like the question that you put in the chat, my view on the race factor, I mean, I can't really do anything because I am going to be who I am. And, but the historical systemic racism and how it's harmed my development, I guess, for, wanting to get to know a lot more about people of my past. Records are not, I mean, records are out there, but we cannot find them. And it's really hard to go back into time to find them. I mean, I've been following this young dude on TikTok and he calls his project British to English Project, where he's helping, people find, the records and stuff like that, on a volunteer basis. But I'm like, the only time that it has harmed me within that is because spiritually I want to get closer to those who have passed away, and I want to honestly know them and know who they are, where they came from. And I'm like, maybe it's so easy to go back on birth certificates and say, hey, maybe I can go to this county and get somebody else's birth certificate of my grandmother's or something like that, and keep going back and back and back. But then most counties do not have them, or then you can't find them, but then you have to show proof and then you got to pay for it. And then I'm like, oh my gosh. So I feel like that's putting so much of a halt on not me getting to know like who I am, but getting to know more of my spiritual realm that I could possibly have. And then there's a lot of ancestors that I have on my dad's side that are white, but then I'll never really know. Like, we know that they're white because grandma said she remember her daddy was white. But other than that, like it was a whole kind of sort of shit show to kind of say that. So I'm like, it's like she doesn't have any access to the records of where he might be buried, and then we do research, and then some people have pictures and some people don't, and it's just a really hard process. So I would say just systemically that has harmed me in a way of kind of getting to know like my family and truly where I come from. I'm not doing the, the African ancestry test or something like that to figure out, what tribe I'm from or what have you. But like the 23andMe's and ancestries, I kind of don't want to do those either. They might be helpful, but I'm like, I'd rather go back on paperwork and see how far I can trace that. But other than that, like the race factor doesn't kind of get me, only because I'm going to be who I am, and I can't help that at all, and I will never want to change. But yes, speaking of like paperwork wise, it's child, I can't even finish my sentence. They don't make me so mad. But that's it for me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Anyone like to go next?
I'd like to go next, and I guess I got to get off vacation and get back into history teacher mode. What makes me mad is, I kind of feel that way too. I kind of feel like, how are you going to tell me about me when you pretty much took an entire race of my people and pretty much not spoon fed us, but nearly forced it down our throats? A different culture. You made us hide what we were accustomed to and what we knew. And you literally force fed us something that we had no idea. And then on top of that, once you force fed me what you wanted me to know, then it was what I knew was like planning out a death or something. Like that was completely horrible. So recently, like, I really don't want to hear, I'm kind of like with you, Kashi, I kind of want to hear nothing y'all got to say, because you've pretty much, torn apart and, diminished what my culture and my ancestors had. So I don't, honestly, I don't want to hear nothing from you. It's just because you made my culture and my beliefs look so nasty and ugly and terrible. You can't tell me anything. And I agree with what the young lady just said a few minutes ago about, as far as like with our ancestry, I get frustrated too. It's like, why is it that you'll see those commercials about the ancestry, and like you'll see how white people can, oh, I'm a descendant of Queen whoever, and I'm like, I could probably get as far as my great-great-grandmother, and that's it. And why? Because once again, as my students call them, these colonizers have pretty much kept me from being able to trace my ancestry. So you kind of do get it. I kind of get in my feelings, because I'm just like, anything that I need to do as a Black woman to trace my ancestry or find out, I can't, because here you came with whatever agenda you had and pretty much, disrupted I feel like it was a disruption. You disrupted our entire being. So no, you can't, I don't want to hear nothing you got to say about what you do spiritually. I don't want to hear nothing about it, because you pretty much robbed me of my experience. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, thanks. Go ahead, Miss Erica.
So, funnily enough, today I actually was on TikTok, surprisingly enough, and apparently TikTok is in a uproar about this lovely Caucasian young lady who went to I guess you could say a temple or a ritual area where somewhere in Mexico, I believe, and she took the warnings and basically them saying, do not do this because this is a sacred space. And she went and did it anyway and posted it on TikTok. And so that has kind of been my experience so far with non-melanated people when it concerns my spiritual practice. Now, I have a lot of people who do know me, and I do have friends that are not melanated, quite a few actually. And they are fully aware that I don't have the same religious beliefs as them. And they respect that. However, you have a good portion of them who don't respect that we are trying to refine who we are as a people. Yes, it is okay for people to appreciate what we do, but it, like a lot of Black people are saying, there are just some things that are strictly for us. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just like they feel like there are things that are strictly for white people. There are a lot of things that are just strictly for Black people or people of color or indigenous people. There are some things that they will never understand because they have lived a different life than we have. Now, you do have those that are willing to understand and actually learn and not try to, nice way to put it, overcompensate themselves within the spirituality. In my case, I don't know a lot about my folks tracing back. However, the one thing I will say about what I do know about my grandmother, my great grandmother, and my great great grandmother, they were some feisty women. And they believed in the Lord. And a lot of people didn't understand how my grandmother could cuss like a sailor, but she had a very strong relationship with God. I was like, let me explain something to you. One thing my grandma always says, and I've come to realize that my new favorite place is where her favorite place was. She always used to say, I know where my corner is. Do you know where yours is? That was her version of a prayer closet. She ain't have a closet. She had a corner in her kitchen where she sat and she smoked her cigarette and she stayed calm. She said her prayers when she was stressed. She would cry in that corner if she needed to. And I've come that because I live in her home, it's now my prayer corner, I guess you could say, because this is a place of where we are normally at because we're cooking. And I create a lot of my do a lot of my spell work and stuff in this kitchen. So, you know, I don't expect a lot of white people to understand that whenever I say I don't like people in my space, I don't like people in my space. You might invite any and everything in your home, but I do not. Um, and that's from the ideals and ideologies and things like that. But I did take some notice of something, and I'm gonna end my little rant here, is that a lot of the different mythological and Greek mythology and different types of gods and goddesses that they have, we also have as well in our spiritual practices. I actually had this conversation with someone else. I was like, it's amazing to me how people are so in an uproar about the different gods and goddesses that we have. I said, but they all essentially do the same thing. They just have different names. I said, every religion literally stems from one thing, literally. I said, it just branched out for different people in different regions and different cultures for them to be able to relate it to who they are as a people. And no, if you cannot relate to the Orishas, or you can't relate to Shiva and all of them over there, or you can't relate to Thor and all of them over there, you can't relate to, you know, all the other different ones that may be out there, that's fine. That's just not for you. Spirituality is not about all these different things and praising anything or one thing. It is about your relationship with your creator and yourself. Period. And that is all. And that does not have a color. Period. So if you have a relationship with God, so be it. If yours don't look the way mine look, then that's okay. We're not all meant to go and do things the same way. But as long as we do what we need to do to have that relationship with the creator and with ourselves and becoming one with ourselves and the creator, that is all that matters. Period. Regardless of your race. And I'm gonna shut up on that part.
Give thanks. Anybody else want to go? Give thanks for that, Erica. Ashe, that was good. I appreciate that. Would anybody else like to share? All right, so yes, that was our last question of the evening, of this evening's discussion. I will have additional questions that we can get into on the chat. One thing that Angela said she was going to post a little later in the chat is when she prepared for her ancestors, the feast. So she's going to show, she said she's going to post that. Now, if you all want to, I don't do it. I might do a small one that I have. I'll post an altar that I do have. I won't post like my private one, but I will post an altar that I do have and a small video explaining like things that I do and why I do it. It doesn't exactly look like the ones in here, but like she said in the book, this is just a start. And as you get to know your ancestors, things change, because sometimes my altar is set up of a degrees. So, facing specific ways, north or south, or, those things. And my elements are specific ways as well. And so it all depends. The more you learn about sacred geometry and degrees, and the more your altars will shift and things like that. So I'll have a video showing off, how I set up a specific altar and what it's for and why it's there and all those kind of things. So if you would like to do that, or if you have any questions about altar spaces, or if you would like to share, please put that in the group chat. I will also, I'll have this recording, and I'll also post like the homework as well too for us to do it throughout the week as well. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions? No? So, okay, so if there are no further questions, give thanks, y'all, for talking with me on this book. I really like this book because it really has me opening back up to, where I need to get back to the basics, especially during Hoodoo Heritage Month. We are now in Hoodoo Heritage Month, and this is a great book to start off and had to read throughout this month as we honor our ancestors and figure out how we want to honor ourselves as we are alive, because we are our ancestors reincarnated, no matter how far back, but we are here. So how are we honoring ourselves, and how are we keeping the bloodline, our lineage intact with undoing what has been oppressed on us? So I do give thanks to all of y'all for coming. Peace and have a good evening.